Allora, benvenuti a tutti. I think we can get started. For this Targetti Lecture, we are back after a 2-year break imposed by the pandemic. It's an occasion, it's a pleasure, again, to be here and to remember Professor Ferdinando Targetti, who was professor of economics at the University of Trento, at the Department of Economics and the Faculty of Economics, as it was called back in the days, and at the School of International Studies, has been the first director of the school in 2001. Professor Targetti had studied economics at Bocconi University at the University of Cambridge, where he was a student of Nicolas Kaldor. He then joined the Faculty of Economics at the University of Trento in 1974. He was a passionate scholar with a keen interest on social issues, and he also served as a member of parliament in the Italian parliament from 1996 to 2001. Back at the university, then he was one of the founding fathers, alongside other colleagues and Professor Nesi as well, of the School of International Studies. And he was one of those who pushed and worked hard to establish the school, the first multidisciplinary graduate school of international studies in Italy. He also worked very hard to have the then President of the Republic, Giorgio Napolitano, to accept becoming an honorary professor at the university, at the school in 2008. He passed away in 2011, leaving, of course, a great void, first and foremost, for his family, his friends, but also at the university for his colleagues and students. And I'm happy that we can be back and in remembering and celebrating his legacy. Today we have with us Ferdinando's wife, Bogna Targetti, and Ferdinando's brother, Ugo Targetti, albeit only remotely, but we are very glad that they are here with us. And I'll give them the floor for a greeting. So, Bogna, buongiorno.
Buongiorno Stefano.
Allora, abbiamo ricordato brevemente.
Sì, ho sentito.
Ferdinando ha fatto per la scuola, ci fa piacere che siate con noi. Ecco, vi lascio la parola per un saluto.
Posso iniziare?
Certo.
Allora, veramente prima ho parlato con Silvia, sono veramente molto dispiaciuta che non potevo, perché per un'influenza che mi trascino, essere con voi direttamente. Ma la prossima volta anche, insomma, in carrozzella, ma vengo, perché ci tengo troppo, veramente. Grazie di questo invito. Sono comunque molto felice che possiamo sentirci almeno via Zoom e sono veramente ogni volta commossa che voi mantenete viva la memoria di mio adorato Ferdinando, perché è una cosa rara, cioè la memoria e gratitudine di solito hanno le vite corte, e questo è come la scuola è diventata un'eccellenza a livello internazionale, vi seguo anche se da lontano con i premi internazionali, è una cosa incredibile. Ferdinando sarebbe felice e fiero. Tuttavia, insomma, la gente che continua a portare avanti questa creatura che è cresciuta, si è robustita e oggi è fantastica. Perciò il mio grazie infinito a tutta la scuola, Stefano, Andrea Fracasso, Luisa Antonioli, i predecessori, e la colonna, ovviamente, la Silvia Tomaselli, e grazie e devo dire che veramente Ferdinando sarebbe felice e chissà, da qualche parte lo è. Oggi dobbiamo, permettetemi ancora due cose che volevo dire. Oggi parleremo della guerra e io mi ricordo, tu ricordavi Cambridge, sì, studiavo con Ferdinando là, e mi ricordo che abbiamo parlato di grandi sistemi, di grandi teorie, incontrando Piero Sraffa, John Robinson, Nicky Caldor, Jeff Harcourt, quell'uomo stravagante, fantastico, anche Richard Goodwin. Invece oggi, insomma, purtroppo la situazione è cambiata, ma Ferdinando era sempre ottimista. Insomma, incrociamo le dita. Io mi sono permessa di porre la domanda, cioè a voi mi sono permessa di dire queste cose che mi sono fatta la domanda da sola, e cioè oggi cosa avrebbe detto Ferdinando. Penso che come tipico suo, come sempre, ovviamente soffrendo come soffriamo tutti per le perdite umane in Ucraina, avrebbe cercato di fare un'analisi di fondo, non sottovalutando l'autocrazia di Putin, però d'altra parte forse avrebbe anche non sottovalutato forse i probabili vantaggi di Biden. Si sarebbe senz'altro ammaricato che l'Europa è così debole, non coordinata, è unita solo per poche cose. E lui, tu accennavi anche il Parlamento, il periodo di Ferdinando al Parlamento, all'epoca, una piccola digressione, all'epoca il Parlamento era l'epoca di quando il presidente era Prodi, di professori, di gente preparata, aveva un'altra forza, un altro, insomma, livello rispetto a quello purtroppo che abbiamo oggi. Tuttavia lui già allora si è battuto che ci fosse, perché era un sostenitore da sempre, ti ricordi Stefano, dell'Unione Europea, appunto dare la forza a questo ente. Fatto sta che la situazione di oggi insomma mostra questa debolezza, e lui avrebbe visto come appunto si è battuto al Parlamento una politica unitaria, comunitaria, per il fisco, per lavoro, per integrazione. E persino parlava, tante volte discutevamo anche insieme quando tornavo da Roma, persino per la necessità di un esercito comune. Oggi sarebbe senz'altro utile. Però, come mi ha insegnato Ferdinando, insomma, anche nelle cose brutte bisogna trovare sempre qualcosa di bello, di meno brutto. Bello è una parola forse troppo grossa in queste circostanze. Tuttavia, abbiamo scoperto questa solidarietà umana, proprio perché tantissime persone accolgono ovunque la gente che scappa dalle bombe. E io devo dire che sono insomma abbastanza anche fiera, una piccola nota, io sono nata in Polonia e la Polonia oggi ha un governo che non mi piace, è un governo populista. Tuttavia la popolazione ha accolto più di 2 milioni di profughi, cioè una cosa impressionante. E questa solidarietà umana è una cosa bella. E poi forse un'altra cosa che abbiamo tutti preso più consapevolezza della cosa che prima ci si rendeva conto quanto è importante la pace. La pace è un bene prezioso che dobbiamo, per avere questo bene prezioso, tutti darci da fare. Il professor Nesi dice the war in Ukraine and the response of the international community towards a new international order. let's hope that it will be not the new international disorder, perché insomma il mondo è quello che è, e soprattutto l'Europa dovrebbe insomma mostrare più forza e più coesione. Grazie ancora e un abbraccio.
Grazie Bogna, grazie mille. Buongiorno Ugo e grazie di essere qui con noi, anche se insomma con i suoi impegni la portano lontano da Trento, ma ci fa piacere averla con noi. E
sì, grazie. Anch'io sono molto contento di questa connessione e voglio anzitutto ringraziare la Scuola di Studi Internazionali di Trento per aver ripreso questa bella tradizione delle Targetti Lecture che erano state interrotte dalla pandemia. E ringrazio in modo particolare te, Schiavo, Stefano, il professor Andrea Fracasso, che siete stati i promotori di questa iniziativa. E voglio ringraziare e ricordare l'azione solerte e affezionata di Silvia Tommaselli, affezionata al ricordo di Ferdinando, organizzatrice dell'evento, e anche voglio ringraziare il professor Nesi, la cui lezione seguirò con grande interesse. Voglio anche ringraziare la signora Camburova, che non ho ancora conosciuto, ma che ci ha consentito di fare questa connessione, tutti i convenuti e gli studenti in particolare. Ricordo brevemente Ferdinando. Ferdinando è mancato il 10 luglio del 2011, sono 11 anni dunque. E in questi anni ci sono mancati, a me sono molto mancati, la rigorosa analisi e l'intelligente giudizio sugli eventi politici ed economici del mondo e del nostro paese. E oggi più che mai sento l'esigenza di conoscere le sue idee, mi sarebbe piaciuto conoscere le sue idee sui correnti avvenimenti così preoccupanti. Possiamo soltanto, per avere un'idea di cosa avrebbe potuto pensare Ferdinando, invito a rileggere il capitolo conclusivo della sua ultima opera, Le sfide della globalizzazione, scritto proprio con Andrea Fracasso e pubblicato nel 2008. In quest'opera, dopo un'ampia disamina del fenomeno della globalizzazione, individuava nella parte finale le cause che avrebbero potuto interromperne lo sviluppo, come in effetti sta avvenendo oggi, e che sono cause economiche, disuguaglianze nella distribuzione dei redditi, crisi finanziarie, eccetera, ma soprattutto politiche. Riporto soltanto un passo, leggerò poche note di un passo a pagina 469, quando dice che la pace come bene comune, garantito in quegli anni dagli equilibri mondiali della Pax americana dopo la caduta del muro di Berlino, e che riferendosi a questa condizione reputo particolarmente significativo rispetto ad oggi. E questo è il passo dell'opera di Ferdinando. La distribuzione del potere politico ed economico nel mondo non sarà più certamente quella di un decennio fa. La possibilità che per questa ragione si verifichino passi indietro nel processo di globalizzazione è tutt'altro che remota. È difficile prefigurare quale nuovo assetto egemonico, che sia di un unico paese oppure di un club di nazioni, oppure multilaterale, prenderà il posto degli Stati Uniti. La speranza che ci sia un modo migliore per gestire il bene pubblico pace attraverso, ad esempio, l'Assemblea dell'ONU è da molti coltivata, ma le crescenti difficoltà del multilateralismo non inducono ad essere molto ottimisti. E penso anch'io che Ferdinando Targetti avrebbe giudicato lo scoppio della guerra anche come esito della carenza e debolezza degli strumenti di governo internazionali, a fronte della potenza del fenomeno della globalizzazione. E tra questi, tra gli strumenti, la debolezza degli strumenti, penso sicuramente alla debolezza politica dell'Unione Europea, che solo ora, con lo scoppio della guerra, sta mostrando una certa capacità di compattezza e di intervento. Però nessuno avrebbe pensato, non allora, ma solo pochi mesi fa, che ci sarebbe stata una crisi così dirompente come la guerra di aggressione all'Ucraina da parte della Russia. ma gli elementi economici e politici della possibile crisi internazionale nel saggio di Ferdinando Targetti erano, almeno in parte, prefigurati, perché non era un'analisi solo economica, pur essendo Ferdinando un economista, ma anche politica e ad ampio raggio. Certo difficile per tutti prevedere il peso determinante di una volontà egemonica fondata sull'ideologia identitaria incarnata dal presidente della Russia, Putin. Possiamo solo dire, pensando alle nostre classi dirigenti e soprattutto a chi ha responsabilità politiche, che non si studia mai abbastanza. E in questo sta il valore della Scuola di Studi Internazionali dell'Università di Trento, cui rinnovo i miei sentiti ringraziamenti.
Bene, molte grazie. And now introduce our speaker. I'm Professor Nesi. I'm particularly glad and like to thank you very much, Giuseppe, for accepting to give this lecture. Professor Nesi has a long CV, but because you have not come here to listen to me, but listen to him, I'll try to squeeze this into a very few words. Pepe Nesi is a professor of international law and law of international institutions at the University of Trento. He was Dean of the Faculty of Law from 2012 to 2018. He's also a member of the Interministerial Committee for Human Rights. He has acted as a legal advisor of the President of the UN General Assembly and of the Permanent Mission of Italy to the UN. He has also been recently elected as a member of the UN International Law Commission. He will be operating in this role from next year to 2027, and we are very glad and very proud also of this as school, as university. I'm particularly glad that Professor Nesi is giving this talk for two reasons. One is that Giuseppe has been one of the founding fathers alongside Ferdinando Targetti of the school. And so I think it's an excellent way to remember Ferdinando. And also it's an excellent opportunity for us and for the students to listen, to get exposed to Professor Nesi, who has not been teaching at the school in the last few years. He has been absorbed completely from his duties at the School of Law. And so we no longer have the opportunity and the chance to learn from him. And so this is, again, an excellent opportunity. The choice of the topic, of course, revolves around the war, but addresses partly the question that has been raised also by Bogna and by Ugo. So the response of the international community and whether this is really a watershed, a turning point in international relation, in the governance of international affairs. And Professor Nesi, with his long experience at the UN, is surely well placed to answer this question. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stefano, and thank you, the School of International Studies, colleagues, friends. I must say that I am very happy and honored to be here, but at the same time, I am also a little afraid because I think, you know, I am a passionate man, and remembering here today Ferdinando Targetti gives me the idea that we spent a lot of time together setting up the School of International Studies. We had almost a weekly meeting from 1999 to 2001 in his office, the Faculty of Economics. And I remember with a lot of nostalgia those moments, because those moments were moments in which I learned a lot. Those meetings were very long meetings. Sometimes they took 3 or 4 hours. But during those meetings, I learned a lot, and I thank Ferdinando for hosting them and for the stubborn attitude that finally led to the establishment of the School of International Studies. We can be very proud. We are going to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the school now. And I think that all the celebrations will also take into account the work that has been done in these years, but also those meetings in Ferdinando's room where we were discussing. Sometime we disagreed on certain topics together with the colleagues from the faculties of sociology and philosophy. But at the end of the day, we always found a way out. And this is what I hope also for the settlement of disputes, and especially for what is going to happen many kilometers from here, but also very close to the place from where we are talking. I will start by recalling with Stefano how did the title of this meeting was decided. We were chatting, and at a certain point, he told me whether I were available to speak, and I said, of course. But the problem was the title, and I didn't want, of course, to speak about something I already have in my archives. I wanted to say something new, hopefully. And so we thought that what was happening, it was at the end of February, the beginning of March. So we thought that what was going to happen in Ukraine deserved a lot of attention from many points of view, from the legal point of view, but also from many others. And so at the end of the day, we decided that this could have been the right title: The War in Ukraine and the Response of the International Community Towards a New International Order, ? I must say that since the 24th of February, scholars and the public opinion all over the world have rightfully given great attention to this issue. 10 days ago, the American Journal of International Law launched a call for paper, so more recently than when we decided the title of our meeting, of this meeting. And the call for papers centers on the war in Ukraine and the future of the international legal order. So we were easy prophets at that time. In this call for papers, the American Journal of International Law specifies that, and I quote, all submissions should focus on the war's implications for international law and international institutions going forward. Contributions could, for example, focus on the prohibition of the use of force, including Article 2.4 of the Charter, international economic measures, the challenges and opportunities that the war creates for international criminal law, including the International Criminal Court, issues relating to migration, human rights or humanitarian law, changes in geopolitical competition and the power that may result from the war and the significance of those changes for international law, or challenges to or the implications for international institutions, including the UN Security Council, NATO, the EU, or other regional organizations, end of quote. These are only some of the issues that have been raised by the war in Ukraine from the legal point of view, with huge implications on many other fields. Of course, I'm not going to delve into all those issues here. I will try rather to, in this 30, 40 minutes, to offer the perspective of an international lawyer with experience in international relations and diplomacy as regards the impact of the Russian aggression on interstate relations, including the reaction of the international community in different settings. Then I will try to address what will be, in my opinion, the consequences of the war, especially, I would say, especially on the institutional framework as emerged after World War II and amended, so to say, in the last 30 years after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of what my son likes to call Cold War I. So firstly, I will recall the facts. Then I will present the response of the international community to what has happened and the significance of this response for international law. I will further elaborate on the repercussions of the war in Ukraine on the international legal order as it stands, according to what was decided by the major powers in the aftermath of World War II. In other words, I will recall what the main features of the current international legal order, so pre-invasion, are. And finally, I will try to understand whether there is any suitable alternative to the international legal order as it stands. So first, the facts. The facts are quite easy, although they are tragic facts. After having amassed more than 100,000 troops at the border with Ukraine over several months, on the 24th of February, the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine. The aggression, or a special military operation, according to Putin, started in the east, in the region of Donbass, and it continued from the north with a clear intention of reaching Kiev. It is worth recalling that after the Russian occupation and annexation of Crimea in 2014, the situation in the Donbass region had always been very tense since the Kremlin deployed similar little green man operations there. So what were, since it is a flagrant violation of international law, or one of the main principles of international law, aggression, this is what what aggression is, actually. One could wonder which were the arguments used by Russia or by President Putin to justify the aggression. You know, they spoke about collective self-defense in favor of Donetsk and Luhansk, regions that are populated by both Ukrainians and people of Russian origin. The second justification was the necessity to act in self-defense in order to prevent genocide. A further justification was, in the words of President Putin, denazify Ukraine. And finally, another strong argument, according to Russia, was that it had to counterbalance the alleged threat from NATO enlargement. In real terms, these special military operations seemed aimed at a regime change in Kiev. The position of the Russian Federation is very clearly explained in the public speech that President Putin delivered on the 24th of February. This position was enshrined in an official document that was used by Russia in the Security Council, recalling a collective self-defense requested by the People's Republic of Donetsk and Luhansk. And again, a reference to special military operation was made in this document. I will come back to these later. You can, I think that anyone can say whatever he or she wants. We are surely in a war. There is an aggression. There are economic consequences, not only for the parties involved in the armed conflict. There has been and there is devastation of buildings, hospitals, schools, theaters, infrastructures. There are risks deriving from nuclear plants for the environment and human health. There is an unprecedented impact on civilian population, not only for the deaths, the wounded, the raped, but also for the enormous number of refugees. We are around 4.5 million people, and internally displaced persons, almost 11 million people in a very short period, 45 days. I can say, and I think that nobody will disagree, that there is a humanitarian catastrophe. There is huge flows of weapons, mines, and there is nuclear threats, both in the form of nuclear weapons and because of the nuclear plants in Ukraine. And let's now turn to what was the response of the international community. I'm going to try to summarize just the most important reactions, starting from the UN system. At the UN, there was a solidarity, there was an enormous, I would say, an unexpected maybe compared to what happened in 2014 when Crimea was invaded, an unexpected solidarity with Ukraine by the overwhelming majority of the 193 UN member states. There has been a strong condemnation of the aggression put forward by a P5. This is also very important. Russia is not one of the 193. Russia is one of the P5, one of the permanent members of the Security Council. So it has, of course, a special responsibility as the other four. Another specific point is that this aggression is against a bordering state that until 1991 was one of the republics of the former USSR, together with Russia. As you know, the Security Council was paralyzed just a few days after, I would say just the day after, to be precise. The news, there was an emergency meeting of the Security Council. A draft resolution was tabled. There was no way to adopt this draft resolution containing a condemnation of the aggression because of the veto, but only Russia exercised its power of veto. So China abstained. However, the text of the vetoed Security Council resolution was adopted, mutatis mutandis, by the General Assembly after a very tense debate in the plenary on the 2nd of March 2022 with an unambiguous vote. And the title of this resolution is very, very important because the title is Aggression Against Ukraine. You all know that to decide whether there is or not an aggression is among the exclusive competences of the Security Council, according to Article 39 of the Charter. In this case, it was the General Assembly to adopt a resolution which is not binding, but it has an extremely strong political weight. And this is the place where aggression was ascertained, as Article 39 would have assigned to the Security Council. The numbers are impressive, 141 yes, 5 no's, and 28 abstentions. Another resolution was adopted on the 24th of March. The title was this time Humanitarian Consequences of the Aggression Against Ukraine, with almost the same result, 140 yes, 5 no's, and 38 abstention. And what I like to note in this regard is that in those days, there was a sort of alternative to this resolution that was tabled by South Africa, but it was withdrawn since it was not going to receive sufficient support. So there were two resolutions in competition, and at the end, the one I was referring to was adopted. You know that just a few days ago, the General Assembly on the 7th of April suspended Russia from the Human Rights Council, this time with different majority, but it was enough since there was a lot of abstentions, but there were 93 votes in favor and 24 votes against. This is quite important, and I will come back to this because, you know, on human rights, sometimes plays are made. In my opinion, just a parenthesis, I think that it would have been better to wait since the Human Rights Council voted some days before to create a commission of inquiry on war crimes in Ukraine. So it would have been better to just to postpone this vote maybe. Anyway, and finally, among the main organs of the United Nations system, also the International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, had something to say about the conflict, since there was a case that was brought to it from Ukraine, since Ukraine was accused of committing genocide in Donbass. So with a very, I would say, astute legal move, the Ukrainian presented a claim according to, which has the legal basis in Article 9 of the Genocide Convention. So it was a case on the interpretation and application of the Genocide Convention, asking provisional measures to the International Court of Justice, which acted very cautiously, but also very efficiently. In almost 1 week, yes, 9 days from the moment in which there was the presentation of opposition, although the Russian Federation did not show, was not present there, but they sent a letter explaining the position of the Russian Federation with a sort of matryoshka document, where also the letter from President Putin I was referring to was inserted. And anyway, what is really important is that with the order of 16th of March, in the case concerning the interpretation and application of the Genocide Convention, the ICJ invited the Russian Federation to stop any military operation. And what is even more important, in paragraph 59 of this order, the ICJ took stance on a very, very delicate issue, the issue of making recourse to war, to armed force in case of genocide. And the ICJ was saying, and I quote, "At the present stage of the proceedings, it suffices to observe that the court is not in possession of evidence substantiating the allegation of the Russian Federation that genocide has been committed to Ukrainian territory. Moreover, it's doubtful that the convention, in light of its object and purpose, authorizes a contracting party's unilateral use of force in the territory of another state for the purpose of preventing or punishing an alleged genocide. End of quote. And I think that these part of this order clarifies a lot as regards the occasions, the situations in which armed force can be started, can be the use of armed force may be made. And I think that this part of this order will indicate the way also in the future as regards the exception to the prohibition of the use of force, which remain mainly linked to self-defense and to the cases authorized by the Security Council. And let's see very short period of time. Let's see what happened beyond the United Nations. There was surely a strong coordination between the European Union, the UK, US, Canada, and Australia. Sanctions were adopted on a bilateral basis and also within some organizations such as the European Union. But not only economic sanctions, also other type of countermeasures were adopted. Since the beginning of the war, 400 Russian diplomats were expelled by states of accreditation. In the last 7 days, 150 diplomats were expelled, especially in the USA and in the European Union and the UK. Another reference should be made to International Criminal Court. Everybody knows that both Russia and Ukraine are not party to the Rome Statute, but at the same time, everybody knows that Ukraine made two declarations in 2014 and 2015, allowing the International Criminal Court to investigate as regards international crimes, especially war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in the territory of Ukraine. So there is a sort of open declaration which has no time limit. So it refers surely also to what is happening today, notwithstanding Ukraine is not party to the Rome Statute. As you also, I'm sure, know, the crime of aggression cannot, in this case, cannot be activated, cannot be issued because both Ukraine and Russia are not parties to the Rome Statute, and the states that are not parties to the Rome Statute cannot be reached by this type of international crimes, according to the Kampala amendments. And finally, as regards the Council of Europe, there was really a complex story, but there was a suspension in the first moment, then there was an expulsion, but when there was the expulsion from the Council of Europe, decided by the Council of Ministers, at the same time, there was the withdrawal by Russia. And this is a very delicate point, since from September 2022, 150 million people, those who are under the jurisdiction of Russia, will have no protection on the international plan. All in all, the Russian aggression has caused the international community to wake up. Strong and consistent reaction by the international community has surpassed any expectation so far. However, it would not be fair to say that there has been also some uneasiness on the part of some states that had very strong ties with Russia as regards the position of international institutions. I would say there was no real support to the Russian position, with the exception of Belarus and Syria. But I would say that maybe it is worth recalling what were the reasons that President Putin put forward in order to justify the so-called special military operation. This document, as I told you, is a public document. It's a document full of propaganda, of unilateral reconstruction of history, and a lot of acrimony towards the westward and NATO. Putin speaks first to the West, and in particular to the US, then to the Ukrainians and their army, and finally to the Russian people. It's a text full of claims of strong criticism to the West, as I said, a nasty statement towards the Ukrainians, of threats and refusal of the territorial situation stemmed from World War II and from the dissolution of the Soviet Union, referring to self-determination. This is a very, very dangerous language. And I say that this is a Cold War language. So Putin, on the one side, criticized the Cold War attitudes of the West, but at the same time, he uses the language of the Cold War. Putin recalls, as he did also before the aggression, that maybe Russia is still weak, but it is a nuclear power. Someone noted that Putin's speech was delivered 20 days after the joint statement of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China on the international relations entering a new era and the global sustainable development. This is the title of this joint statement made on the 4th of February, the beginning of the Olympic Games in Beijing. At first sight, the joint statement seems to be a periodic ordinary document in which the officers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia and China refer to common position on relevant issues of international relations. However, the timing with which it was issued on the eve of the aggression and some aspects of the documents are remarkable. In fact, the joint declaration gives some clear-cut indications of the view of the sides. This is how Russia and China call themselves in the joint declaration on several issues. There are interesting, I would say, thoughts as regards democracy, peace, development, and cooperation, challenge to security, and UN and the future of international relations. In this joint declaration, you can find several points touched by also by Putin in his statement of the 21st of February, such as reference to the role of US, NATO and allies, the outcome of World War II, Nazism, etc. However, if we focus on the last issue, so on the UN and the future of international relations, we read that, and I quote, the sides, so China and Russia, underline that Russia and China, so you see, there is this strange way of also presenting the position. The sides, as they were third, underline that Russia and China, as world powers and permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, intend to firmly adhere to moral principles and accept their responsibility, strongly advocate the international system with the central coordinating role of the United Nations in international affairs, defend the world order based on international law, the world order based on international law, including the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, end of quote. However, at the end of the paragraph, it is said that the sides intend, and I quote again, to jointly build international relations of a new type. What are these international relations of a new type to be jointly built? The answer is provided in a few lines, and it is the following. So I give you now, but you can read it, of course, in this official document, what is the answer to the question we made at the very beginning. The sides call for the establishment of a new kind of relationships between world powers on the basis of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and mutually beneficial cooperation. They reaffirm that the new interstate relations between Russia and China are superior to political and military alliances of the Cold War era. Friendship between the two states has no limits. There are no forbidden areas of cooperation. Strengthening of bilateral strategic cooperation is neither aimed against third countries nor affected by changing international environment and circumstantial changes in third countries. Circumstantial changes. Something could happen, you know. In these words, the sides reiterate as a manifesto what has been the strongest criticism they made to the West, a Cold War language aimed at intimidating the interlocutors in the name of an alleged superiority of the sides. Conclusion, it does not seem that this document offers any new model for shaping a new international legal order. It's not even able to counterbalance the strong response of the international community to the Russian aggression to Ukraine. It's a mix, in my opinion, of frustration and criticism that does not add anything to build the future. But one could wonder why this very strong and I would say for some aspects really inexplicable position. I think that after I read what is the proposal, I should recall to everybody, because sometimes we forget it, what is the system today? What is the international legal order we are living in? With all its imperfections, as I said. It's a system that has been built on the ashes of World War II and has at its basis, legal basis, but I will say also moral basis, the UN Charter. And I say this because the UN Charter was adopted, as you know, by those who were the winners of the Second World War. Among these, there was also the Soviet Union and then Russia. The core of today's principles and shared values of the international community as we know it, is the maintenance of international peace and security, the prohibition of the use of armed forces, human rights, international humanitarian law, people's self-determination, decolonization, non-intervention in internal and international affairs, which does not mean to create a dam in order to prohibit any intervention which is aimed at monitoring human rights. Cooperation and development. These principles and values have been consecrated and reaffirmed international treaties and important General Assembly resolutions. Moreover, environment and cooperation against terrorism were added to these fundamental principles and values. It is an international legal order based on international law, the rule of law at international level, shared legal rules, shared although not always respected. We all know this, especially by the great powers, both East and West. In recent years, we cannot hide that there was a gradual deterioration of the system. The aggression against Ukraine is only the last and most violent step of a situation of uneasiness on the part of many states, not one or two, as someone thinks. That started many years ago. This uneasiness is evident in Putin's speech. However, this cannot justify the aggression against Ukraine. There is lack of mutual trust. The symptoms are, for instance, the withdrawal from many international multilateral agreements against Pacta sunt servanda, especially on disarmament, but not only. The fact that the number of multilateral treaties concluded in the last 20 years is very low, especially if compared to what happened before. And this is really strange. We think that not only thanks to globalization, but also because of globalization, this is the moment in which we need more multilateral cooperations in fields such as climate change, terrorism. It's now 25 years that the UN is unable to adopt a comprehensive convention on international terrorism. Pandemics, natural disasters, migrations. What should be the basis of a new international legal order? Should it be a new order, or we will go, as Mr. Targetti said, through a phase of great disorder in view of new strategic balances? Beyond new balances and different alliances, what will be the new fundamental principles and shared values of the new world order? I confess that I am very happy with what we have today. And in this regard, I had also some debates with friends who were trying to classify the war in Ukraine as a sort of war revolution. I told them very, very clearly, we cannot use this word because this expression, because when you use the expression revolution, in our way of thinking, it's always something nice and good. Frankly speaking, I don't see anything good in this war. I think that the root causes of the uneasiness I was referring to should be eliminated. So I think that the international institutions, all international institutions, should fight against poverty, against inequalities, against the huge differences that can be used by populists, by states that are populist, in order to attract those who are not happy with this system. But it is time to wake up, not through wars, but through dialogue, cooperation, and diplomacy. Thank you very much.